Parents tried forcing me to sell my house to cover my sister's $270,000 debt. After cutting me out 5 years ago. My name is Caroline Reese. I am 33 years old, and after being cut off and abandoned by my parents for 5 long years, they showed up demanding I sell my house to cover my sister's $270,000 debt. When I refused, they broke into my home and destroyed everything I had built. It began on a gray Tuesday morning, rain streaking down the windows of my little brick house. I was sipping coffee, the steam curling against the air, when my phone rang. It was Mom. 5 years without a single call, and suddenly her number lit my screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was syrupy sweet, but underneath I heard the urgency. Caroline, family helps family. Your sister's in trouble. She owes $270,000. We need you to sell the house and help her out. Sis. I nearly spilled my coffee. Excuse me? You cut me off. You left me with nothing. And now you want me to sell my house. You don't understand, she pressed. If Paige doesn't pay, dangerous people will come after her. You owe this family. If you're watching this, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe, because betrayal feels different when it's disguised as love. 5 years ago, when I was 28, I begged them for support after losing my job. I remember standing in their kitchen, the smell of pot roast heavy in the air, asking for a loan to cover rent until I found work. Dad leaned back, folded his arms, and said, We can't carry dead weight anymore, Caroline. Sis. That was the night they locked the door behind me. Paige stood in the hallway with a smug smile, whispering, Guess I'm the only daughter worth keeping. Sis. I carried that wound into every shift, every late night, every dollar I saved to buy my house. And now they wanted to rip it from me. I'm not selling, I told Mom, my voice sharper now. Paige dug her own hole. She can climb out. There was silence on the line. Then Dad's voice cut in, rough and furious. You selfish brat. After all we've done for you? Fine. Don't help. But don't come crawling to us when you regret it. Sis. The call ended. My heart pounded in my chest. I thought that would be it. A fight over the phone. But a week later, I came home from work and found my driveway full of their cars. My stomach dropped. I barely had time to step out before I heard it, the crash of glass breaking inside. I sprinted to the porch, my keys fumbling in my hands, and froze as I saw them through the window. Dad, Paige, and even Mom inside my living room. Dad's fist slammed into my picture frames, shattering them. Paige swung a bat into my bookshelf, pages flying like wounded birds. Mom ripped my curtains down, her face twisted with rage. My home, my sanctuary, torn apart. I burst through the door. What the hell are you doing? I screamed. Paige turned, smirking, her bat still in her hand. Teaching you what family means, Caroline. Another slam. This time Dad's boot against my coffee table, splintering it into pieces. My chest heaved, rage and fear twisting together. I yanked out my phone with shaking hands, dialing 3 numbers I never thought I'd call on my own parents. 911. As the dispatcher answered, my father turned toward me, his face red, eyes wild. Make that call, he sneered. But remember, you'll regret turning on us. The line crackled in my ear as the dispatcher said, Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are on their way. Sis. But inside my home, my family wasn't stopping. They were just getting started. The dispatcher's voice in my ear was calm, but my pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear. Stay somewhere safe, ma'am. Officers are on their way. Safe? There was nowhere safe inside my house anymore. Dad yanked the phone out of my hand and slammed it onto the floor, the screen shattering into a spiderweb of glass. You think the cops will save you? He snarled. We're your parents. This is our right. Paige laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. She swung her bat into the side of my TV, the screen exploding into static before going black. Look at her face, she sneered. Little Caroline finally thinks she's somebody. But she's still nothing. The rage in me surged hot, but underneath it was an old ache. I was 17 again, standing in the garage with grease on my hands after fixing the lawn mower. Dad had found me there, shaking his head. Paige will make millions one day. You'll just scrape by. His voice had been final, dismissive, like a prophecy carved in stone. Now he was swinging bats at my future, trying to prove himself right. Stop. I shouted, my voice cracking. This is my house. You don't get to take this from me. Mom's eyes narrowed and she tore another picture frame from the wall, glass raining across the carpet. We gave you life, Caroline. You owe us everything. Don't you dare forget that. My hands shook as I backed toward the kitchen, eyes darting for anything I could use. My bat, the old softball bat, leaned by the laundry room door. I grabbed it, the weight familiar, grounding. When I turned back, Paige was already advancing on me, her bat slung casually over her shoulder. What are you gonna do? She taunted. Hit your own sister? Her smirk was the same one she'd worn at 15 when she stole my prom dress and twirled in it at school just to humiliate me. She'd always been the star. I'd always been the shadow. Not anymore. I raised my bat, my voice steady this time. Get out. Dad barked a laugh, his eyes wild. Listen to her. She thinks she's tough. He stepped closer, shoulders heaving. You'll regret this, Caroline. Family always gets paid back. I gripped the handle so hard my knuckles burned. Then let the police settle it. The words seemed to slice through the air, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in Paige's eyes. She lowered her bat slightly, glancing at the window where red and blue lights suddenly flashed across the shattered glass. Sirens wailed outside. Mom cursed under her breath. Richard, they're here. Dad growled, his face twisting. This isn't over. The front door burst open, officers storming inside with weapons drawn. Put the bats down. Now. The scene froze. Paige dropped hers first, the aluminum clanging against the hardwood. Mom raised her hands. Dad hesitated, his glare burning into me like a brand, before finally letting his bat fall. My chest collapsed with relief, but my knees nearly buckled. As the officers cuffed them, Mom turned her head, eyes blazing. Caroline, you'll regret this. We're your blood. You'll come crawling back. Her words slashed me open, dragging me back to the night they cut me off. 28 years old, standing in the driveway with a duffel bag, hearing the lock click behind me as Mom's voice rang out. Don't come back until you're worth something. Now I had something and they wanted to destroy it. The officers read them their rights as they were led toward the squad cars. But even as the flashing lights painted my living room in red and blue, Dad twisted his head to shout one last warning at me. This isn't over, Caroline. Not by a long shot. And deep down I knew he meant it. The squad car doors slammed, muffling Mom's shrieks and Dad's curses. Paige sat in the back of the second cruiser, her mascara streaked, still glaring at me through the window like she wanted to burn a hole in my skin. I stood on the porch, arms wrapped tight around myself, the cool night air slicing against my bare arms. My house, my sanctuary, was a crime scene. Shattered glass littered the floor. Furniture splintered. My TV lay dead on the rug. An officer, Morales, approached with a clipboard. His eyes softened when he looked at me. Miss Reese, I know this is hard, but I need you to confirm. You want to press charges? My throat was raw, but I nodded. Yes. Every single charge. Inside, the smell of dust and broken wood clung to the air. My boots crunched over glass as I walked through the wreckage with Morales. He pointed out the damages. Window smashed, coffee table shattered, bookshelf destroyed. You're looking at maybe 35,000 in damages. My stomach turned. That's everything I worked for. Morales glanced at me. And that's why we're here. They don't get to take this from you. His words should have been comforting, but all I felt was hollow. Later that night, when the cruisers drove off and silence returned, I sat in the middle of my ruined living room, knees pulled to my chest. The boards over the broken window rattled in the wind. The house no longer felt safe. It felt violated. A memory crept in. Me at 22 working doubles at a diner, tucking away every tip into a jar labeled house fund. Mom had walked in once, seen the jar and laughed. Asterisk, you'll never save enough. Stop dreaming. I'd proven her wrong. But tonight they tried to erase it all. 2 days later the phone rang. A blocked number. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me said I should. Dad's voice filled the line, low and venomous. You think you've won? Press charges all you want. But we're blood, Caroline. Blood doesn't break. You'll pay for this. I nearly hung up, but I forced my voice to stay steady. I survived 5 years without you. I'll survive this too. He let out a bitter laugh. We'll see. The line went dead. The threats didn't stop. Anonymous notes shoved under my door. Asterisk, family always gets what it's owed. Asterisk spray paint scrawled across my garage one morning. Traitor. Each act of intimidation pressed harder on my chest, but with it came a fire I hadn't felt before. This wasn't about just surviving anymore. This was about fighting back. I met with the district attorney a week later. The office smelled faintly of coffee and paper, the walls lined with case files. The DA leaned forward, tapping a pen against the desk. Your parents and sister are facing felony charges. With the evidence we have, your call recording, the damage photos and officer testimony, this is strong. I nodded, gripping the folder in my lap so tight the edges bent. The DA studied me for a moment. Caroline, I need you to understand. Once we move forward, there's no going back. Family or not, they'll be treated like any other criminals. I swallowed hard. They made their choice when they smashed my door in. I'm making mine now. Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. But deep down I knew my family. They wouldn't surrender quietly. And that fear was confirmed when a week later, I pulled into my driveway and saw what they'd left waiting for me. Spray painted in jagged red letters across my front door were 3 words. This is war. The red paint dripped down my front door like blood, the words screaming at me in the late afternoon light. This is war. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle. The lock was intact, thank God, but the message was enough. They hadn't given up, they were escalating. Inside, the house still bore scars from their first attack. Cardboard over the window. Splintered wood where the coffee table used to be. Every time I tried to breathe, the memory of bats swinging through the air came back. I called Detective Morales immediately. He came within the hour, his cruiser crunching over the gravel. He studied the graffiti, his jaw tight. They're playing with fire. This isn't just intimidation, it's harassment. We'll document it. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, fighting the shake in my knees. How much worse will it get? He met my eyes. Sometimes people like this, they only stop when the court forces them to. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the house had me jolting awake, gripping the softball bat I now kept beside my bed. The dark no longer felt quiet. It felt alive, like it was holding its breath with me. At 3 a.m. my phone buzzed. A new message from a blocked number. Drop the charges or we'll make you. My chest tightened, but I refused to delete it. Instead, I forwarded it to Morales. More evidence. More rope for them to hang themselves with. A week later, court hearings began. Walking into that courthouse felt like walking into a storm. My parents sat at the defendant's table in stiff suits, Paige in a navy dress, all 3 glaring at me like I was the traitor. Mom's eyes followed me, cold and cutting. Dad leaned forward, whispering something into his lawyer's ear, his face purple with rage. Paige just smirked. The same smirk she'd worn when she stole my prom dress years ago and paraded it through the halls of our high school. I sat down at the plaintiff's table, my lawyer placing a comforting hand on mine. Stay calm. Let the evidence speak. But calm wasn't easy when every fiber of me screamed that I was sitting across from the people who had raised me, people who should have protected me, but instead turned into predators. The DA presented the photos first. Shattered glass, splintered wood, the graffiti on my garage. The jury shifted uncomfortably as each image flashed. Then came the audio recording from the 911 call, my trembling voice begging for help, Dad's voice in the background snarling threats. Hearing it in that quiet courtroom made my skin crawl all over again. Paige's lawyer tried to spin it, painting me as vindictive. She's just bitter because her family cut her off years ago, he argued. This is her revenge. I forced myself to look at the jury, not him. My revenge, I said when it was my turn to speak, was building a life without them. Buying a house with my own hands after they told me I would never amount to anything. Their revenge was breaking into it and destroying it when I refused to give them money. That's the difference. The room went still. Dad's face twisted. He slammed his hand down on the table, the sound cracking through the courtroom. The judge's gavel came down hard. Order. One more outburst and you'll be removed. But I didn't flinch. For the first time in my life, he was the one being silenced. So I knew my father. He wasn't going to let the system be the final word. And that fear clawed at me harder when a few nights later, I came home to find an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a single photograph, me sleeping in my bed. The photo slipped from my hands, fluttering onto the kitchen counter. My stomach dropped. It was me in my bed, hair sprawled across the pillow, bat clutched tight against my chest. The blinds had been cracked open just enough for someone to see inside. Someone had been in my yard. Watching. Waiting. My hands shook as I dialed Morales. He picked up on the second ring. "Detective, they left me a picture. Of me. Sleeping." The silence on his end stretched before he answered. "Bag it. Don't touch it again. I'll have someone over in the morning." "Morning?" My voice cracked. "What about tonight? You've got the cameras, right? Keep the doors locked. We'll pull the footage." I hung up, my breath coming in short gasps. Every shadow outside the window felt like a figure. Every rustle of wind like footsteps. I stayed awake until dawn, my bat on my lap, eyes burning from fear and exhaustion. The next morning Morales arrived. He studied the photo, his jaw tightening. "They're escalating. This isn't just vandalism anymore. This is stalking. We'll add it to the charges." "Charges?" I laughed bitterly. "They don't care about charges. They just want me scared." He met my eyes firm. "Then don't give them that power. You've made it this far, Caroline. Don't break now." The trial dragged on. Week after week I sat across from them in court. Dad glowered, Mom wept crocodile tears. Paige rolled her eyes like this was all some performance for her entertainment. One afternoon as I left the courthouse, Paige brushed past me, her perfume cloying. She whispered, "Enjoy your victory lap. It won't last." Her words cut sharp, but I forced myself to keep walking. The D, meanwhile, was relentless. Witnesses were called. Neighbors who saw the flashing lights the night of the break-in. Contractors who estimated the $30,000 in damages. Every fact stacked heavier on my family. But the turning point came when the prosecution played my 911 call. The jury listened to my trembling voice, then Dad's roar. Asterisk, "You'll regret turning on us." The courtroom went silent. I didn't need to look at the jury to know those words had sealed his fate. At night, though, the fear still lingered. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph. Proof that they, or someone working for them, had been inside my yard, feet from my bed. One night, as I reviewed the new footage from my cameras, I froze. There, in grainy black and white, was a figure. Hood up, standing at the edge of the yard. Watching my window. Then slipping away. I sent the clip to Morales immediately. His reply was short. Asterisk, got it. More rope for them to hang themselves with. Asterisk. By the time closing arguments arrived, I was exhausted but sharper than ever. I stood before the jury, my palms sweating, my voice steady. They told me family helps family. But what they meant was family takes from family, until there's nothing left. For 5 years I built my life alone. And when they saw what I had, they tried to smash it to pieces. That isn't love. That's greed. That's abuse. And I won't let it define me anymore. The courtroom was still. Even the judge leaned forward. When the jury filed back, my heart thudded against my ribs. The foreman stood, cleared his throat, and read the words I had been waiting for. Guilty. On all counts. The gavel slammed. And just like that, my family's empire of intimidation cracked. But even as they were led away in cuffs, Dad twisted around, eyes blazing. "This isn't over, Caroline. You'll see." And somehow I knew he wasn't lying. The courtroom emptied slowly, a tide of whispers trailing behind me as I stood frozen in the aisle. My parents were shoved through a side door in cuffs, Paige stumbling after them, her shrill voice echoing down the hall. The gavel's crack still rang in my ears. Guilty. On all counts. Asterisk, asterisk. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow, like the echoes of their threats still clung to my skin. Aunt Jo met me outside, her wiry arms wrapping me in a hug that smelled faintly of cigarette smoke. "You did it, Caroline," she murmured into my hair. "They can't touch you anymore." I wanted to believe her. 4 weeks after the verdict, I lived like a shadow. I jumped at knocks on the door, checked the locks 3 times before bed, and scanned my yard for footprints. Every whisper of wind felt like another warning. But slowly the silence grew thicker than the fear. No more calls. No more spray paint. No more photographs shoved under my door. The house was still scarred, boards where windows had been, a coffee table reduced to splinters. But it was mine. And for the first time in years so was my peace. Neighbors began stopping by. One left a casserole on the porch. Another offered to help repaint. Word had spread about the trial, and instead of pity, there was respect in their eyes. One woman, Mrs. Sanders, clasped my hand and said softly, "You stood up to them. You did what most of us never could." Her words burrowed deep. For so long I had been defined by what my family said I wasn't: weak, stupid, unworthy. Now strangers were telling me I was strong. I poured myself into rebuilding. New windows gleamed where plywood had been. Fresh paint covered the scars of graffiti. I replaced the shattered TV with one I bought in cash, a symbol of survival. Every nail I hammered, every wall I scrubbed, I whispered to myself, "They don't own me anymore." And little by little the house began to feel like home again. Months later Morales called. "Sentencing's done. Your parents and sister are looking at serious time. Restitution will cover the damages." I thanked him though my voice shook. Restitution. Money. None of it could undo the betrayal. That night I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The world was quiet. And in that quiet I finally allowed myself to breathe. I remembered being 28, standing in my parents' driveway, the lock clicking behind me as they cut me off. I remembered the sting of that night, the hopelessness, the certainty that I would never be enough. But I was enough. I had built a life without them. I had stood against them when they came back swinging. And I had won. To anyone listening now, have you ever faced betrayal? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. Because betrayal doesn't end you. Sometimes it remakes you. Stronger. Sharper. Unbreakable. I lifted my mug, the steam curling in the twilight, and whispered to the empty yard. I chose freedom over blood.